All right, John Silva and Diego Lopes are about to slug it out in an absolute barn burner. These two exciting featherweights. Hey everybody, I'm Mike Heck from MMAfighting.com, and that is today's question of the day from Matt. And I love this question, and I love this fight, because this fight is absolutely going to rock. I'm very, very excited for it. This featherweight division has been coming along nicely over the past several months. Of course, Alexander Volkanovski is the champion again. He's likely going to defend that title against Lerone Murphy in his first defense of the second reign.
This week in MMA might be one of the wildest we've seen in a long time. Imagine this, two fighters who already can't stand each other suddenly run into each other at the UFC Fighter Hotel. And yes, it almost turned ugly. Cameras caught Diego Lopes and Jean Silva in the middle of a heated moment, and now the footage is out. Fans are going crazy over who really got the upper hand, but that's just the beginning. At the same time, Dana White has officially cut a UFC fighter, making waves with another controversial decision about the roster. And while all of this is happening, Alex Pereira has made headlines of his own by training with a surprising partner, someone who once stood across from him inside the octagon. From fights almost breaking out in hotels to shocking changes in the UFC, this week is packed with drama you won't want to miss. It all started with Diego Lopes and Jean Silva. These two Brazilians were already on bad terms before fight week even began. Silva had been vocal in interviews, saying straight up that he didn't like Lopes. He even went as far as to suggest that if Lopes managed to take him down during their fight, he would hand over his entire fight purse. It was the kind of bold statement that got fans talking, but Lopes brushed it off. He laughed about it in interviews, saying Silva should keep his money because he was going to need it. Lopes also threw in a jab of his own, joking that Silva was jealous because he had better hair. The trash talk was already creating tension, but nobody expected it to spill into real life so suddenly. That's why the scene at the hotel shocked everyone. Silva and Lopes ran into each other while surrounded by their teams. Words were exchanged, voices were raised, and for a moment it looked like fists might fly before security stepped in. Silva later bragged that his team was made up of bigger guys, heavier fighters, while Lopes had mostly smaller training partners around him. According to Silva, that's why his side barked louder and walked away with the upper hand. The footage released online shows just the end of the encounter, but even those few seconds were enough to send fans into debate. Was Lopes being outnumbered, or was Silva trying too hard to look tough? Either way, the moment added gasoline to a fight that was already burning hot. And the story didn't end there. Lopes fired back when asked about the situation, saying Silva could talk all he wanted.
But as far as this fight goes, between John Silva and Diego Lopes, what's at stake? Kind of depends. Maybe a title shot, maybe a title eliminator, maybe the winner has to play sort of the contender goaltender role. Let me explain. If John Silva wins, he's going to do so in a big, big way. A memorable way, a highlight reel kind of a way.
But Saturday night inside the cage was going to prove everything. For him, this wasn't about who had the bigger entourage at the hotel. It was about showing the world that he belonged at the top of the featherweight division. Lopes even shared his thoughts on who deserved the next title shot, pointing to Lerone Murphy after his explosive knockout win. By tying himself to the bigger picture of the division, Lopes showed he's already thinking beyond just Silva. Still, there's no denying that this personal feud has made their matchup one of the most anticipated of the month. Fans aren't just tuning in to see who wins. They're tuning in to see who can back up the words, the bets, and now the hotel drama. Silva, of course, wasn't backing down either. In one of his interviews, he made it crystal clear that he and Lopes would never be friends. He even doubled down by saying that in the streets, there are no rules, no weight classes, and no limits. That comment came when he was talking about Paulo Costa, another fighter he doesn't get along with. Silva said that even though Costa competes in a much heavier division, if they crossed paths outside the cage, it would not matter. Those kinds of statements only added to his reputation as someone who loves stirring the pot. Costa, never one to stay quiet, quickly clapped back on social media. He mocked Silva's size, calling him a little dwarf, a child too small to even bother with. Fans loved the back and forth, and suddenly Silva was making enemies in multiple directions. For Diego Lopes, all of this noise might actually be helping. In the fight game, attention is everything. The more people talk, the more hype builds around the fight. Even though Silva tried to frame himself as the louder and tougher fighter, Lopes came across as calm and confident. He didn't seem rattled by Silva's comments, and that calmness can sometimes be more intimidating than trash talk. Still, this rivalry is shaping up to be one of those moments that fans will remember. Not because of a belt on the line, but because of the raw emotion and real tension between two fighters who genuinely don't like each other. While that drama was unfolding, the UFC world was hit with another shocker. Dana White quietly removed fighter Melissa Martinez from the roster. Martinez had been a young prospect when she joined the promotion.
And if that happens, his next fight will 1000% be for the featherweight title. He probably won't be next for Volkanovski, but Silva's next fight will be for the belt. If Diego Lopes wins, I doubt he's going to be in the same spot because he just lost a pretty clear-cut decision to Volkanovski earlier this year. I would say with the win, he fights Aljamain Sterling, or he gets the rematch with Movsar Evloev, and depending on who is holding the title
in 2022. At only 25 years old, many thought she would grow into a top contender, but things didn't go as planned. After 3 UFC fights, she found herself with 2 losses and only 1 win. Her last fight ended in a knockout loss, and not long after, her name disappeared from the UFC's online roster. No big announcement, no flashy headline, just gone. For some fans, this was a reminder of how ruthless the UFC can be. Unlike some other sports where athletes get long contracts and plenty of time to prove themselves, in the UFC every fight could be your last. If you don't perform, there's always another fighter ready to take your spot. Dana White has said many times that the UFC is the toughest proving ground in the world, and this decision showed just how true that island. At the same time, critics pointed out that Martinez was still early in her career and maybe deserved more chances. But White has always been about results first, and in this case, Martinez's time was up. Around the same time, Dana White was also making headlines for something else: fighter pay. This is a topic that never seems to go away, and White found himself once again defending the UFC's pay structure compared to boxing. With White helping promote a huge boxing match between Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford, people were quick to ask him about the difference in money between top boxers and UFC champions. White argued that while a few boxers make massive paydays, the UFC spreads money across the whole roster. He said UFC fighters eat what they kill, meaning the stars who bring in pay-per-view buys earn the most. Critics weren't satisfied, pointing out that even journeymen in boxing sometimes make millions, while UFC fighters at the same level earn far less. The debate continues, but White didn't seem bothered. He even said the UFC doesn't stop fighters from revealing their paychecks, putting the responsibility on the fighters themselves if they want to share what they make. What made things even more interesting was White's announcement of a new project. He revealed plans to create a contender series for boxing, modeled after the UFC's successful show, where new talent fights for contract. White promised that in this boxing version, the best will fight the best. Undefeated boxers would face other undefeated boxers, with the goal of building stars from the ground up. The show isn't expected to launch until 2026, but the idea already has fans buzzing.
Depends on if he's the 6th man on the ice trying to put the puck in the empty net, or if he's the goalie keeping the puck that is Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev, the puck being their title hopes, behind that line. A loss for Diego would be pretty tough. Of course, he would still be a high-ranked fighter, fans would love him, exciting guy to watch, but in terms of title hopes, not in a great spot.
Some see it as White trying to reshape boxing the way he reshaped MMA. Others wonder if it's just another way for him to expand the UFC brand. Either way, it proves White isn't just focused on today, he's always planning 2 or 3 steps ahead. But while White was looking toward the future, one story from the past made fans smile. Former UFC champion Dominick Cruz shared a surprising memory from his career. Back in 2011, Cruz was asked to take a fight against Demetrius Johnson on short notice. At the time, Cruz was living in a small 1-bedroom studio apartment, struggling to make ends meet. He agreed to the fight, and not long after, Dana White rewarded him with a Nissan GTR, a car worth over $120,000. For Cruz, that gift was life-changing. He admitted he pulled up to his tiny apartment in a car that cost more than everything he owned. It was a moment that showed another side of White, one that fans don't always hear about. While critics often attack him for low fighter pay, stories like this prove he sometimes goes out of his way to take care of fighters in unexpected ways. Meanwhile, current UFC champion Alex Pereira made headlines of his own. Perreira is preparing for his rematch against Magomed Ankalaev, a fight that could define his legacy. To get ready, he brought in a surprising training partner, Sean Strickland. This shocked fans because Strickland and Perreira had once been opponents, even rivals. Strickland had talked plenty of trash before their fight, only to be knocked out by Perreira in brutal fashion. Yet here they were, training together, sparring, and even sharing barbecue after their sessions. Footage of the two laughing and eating together spread quickly, showing just how unpredictable the fight game can be. Yesterday's enemies can become today's allies if it means sharpening skills and getting better. For Perreira, this move shows his willingness to learn from anyone, even a former rival. For Strickland, it's a chance to stay close to the top by training with one of the most dangerous men in the sport. While fighters were preparing for big bouts, Robert Whittaker raised an important issue about refereeing. After watching a recent fight where repeated eye pokes went unpunished, Whittaker said enough is enough.
Because that's 2 straight losses, 3 total in the UFC, and those losses will be to 3 of the very top guys in the company at 145 pounds. Very tough spot to beat. But like I said, the fight absolutely rocks. So the biggest winners will be us who get to watch it. I just wish the top to bottom of this card was better than it is.
He pointed out that fighters are given warnings but rarely lose points, even after multiple fouls. For him, that's unacceptable. Eye pokes can completely change a fight. One poke can damage a fighter's vision, slow them down, or even end the match. Whittaker believes referees need to start deducting points immediately after repeated fouls to force fighters to adjust. His comments sparked debate among fans and experts. Some agreed, saying fighters will only change if the punishment is real. Others argue that accidents happen, and taking points too quickly could ruin fights. Still, Whittaker's stance highlighted one of MMA's biggest ongoing problems: how to balance fairness with the unpredictable nature of the sport. At the same time, the Fighting Nerds team, once one of the hottest gyms in MMA, found themselves under fire. After 2 of their top fighters lost at UFC Paris, critics piled on. Some fans said the team was overrated, that their success had been overhyped. Carlos Prates, one of the team's leaders, didn't take kindly to the criticism. On a podcast, he fired back, saying that if people get joy from watching someone lose, it says more about them than the fighters. He reminded everyone that his teammates had been winning for years and only lost to tough opponents. Prates also revealed his own plan: fight for the welterweight title, avenge his loss to Ian Gary, and then retire early. He said he doesn't want to fight into his late 30s. Instead, he wants to win, rematch Gary, and then relax, enjoy life, and take care of his family. For fans, it was surprising to hear a fighter already planning his exit at just 32 years old. Not every fighter gets to choose their exit, though. Cynthia Calvillo, a veteran of both the flyweight and strawweight divisions, announced her retirement. At 38 years old, she admitted the sport had given her everything, but it was time to walk away. Calvillo thanked her coaches, teammates, and fans in a heartfelt message. She spoke about the sacrifices she made, the hours in the gym, the pain of injuries, and the highs and lows of her career. Her biggest win came in 2020 when she defeated Jessica Ai, proving she could hang with the best. But in recent years, losses piled up, and her dream of becoming champion slipped away. Even so, she left the sport with her head held high, proud of what she accomplished. Her farewell reminded fans that behind every fight is a person with hopes, struggles, and a life beyond the cage. All of these stories, from heated hotel confrontations to surprise training camps, from retirements to shocking roster cuts, show just how unpredictable MMA really island. One day you're fighting in the main event, the next day your name disappears from the roster. One day you're rivals, the next day you're training partners. And sometimes, 2 fighters can't even make it through fight week without nearly coming to blows in a hotel lobby. Lopes and Jean Silva may have grabbed the spotlight this week, but they're just one part of the bigger picture. Dana White continues to shape the sport with tough decisions and bold new projects. Legends like Dominick Cruz remind us of the sport's history, while champions like Alex Pereira show us the future. Veterans like Robert Whittaker fight for fairness, while new teams like the Fighting Nerds fight for respect. And through it all, fans keep watching, because no sport delivers chaos and drama quite like MMA. If this much can happen outside the cage in just 1 week, imagine what will happen when these fighters step inside it. Every fight is more than just punches and kicks, it's pride, legacy, and sometimes even survival. And that's why stories like these keep us coming back, week after week, waiting to see what happens next.